Hello again. You get to hear me talk one more time. This session, we're going to talk a little bit about representation matters and what that means, what representation means, why it's important for us as an Eterna community, and then how we improve it in not our own, only our own lives, but also in going forward with development and game playing, things like that. Again, if you were, maybe you weren't here, my name is Karmen Williams. I am an assistant professor at the City University of New York. And yes, representation matters. Okay, so what representation means is it is really about how media deals with, or in this particular case, how media deals with and presents gender, age, ethnicity, national and regional identity, social issues, and events to an audience. And so we are very familiar with media, different parts of media. As people in the gaming industry here, we are familiar that this is a form of media and things like that. So media has the power to shape an audience's knowledge and understanding about these important topics. And so we think about even commercials and how there's different representation on there, how kids get to see, or children get to see how different things operate in society. They learn how society gets along with each other a lot of times from different media. For example, and right before I say for example, so there is this question. It used to be a statement that does society reflect media, or does media reflect society? And so this push and pull between media and society. But I asked today, should media reflect the society? And we'll talk about that a little more in a moment. So just a little background. So thinking about the importance and relevance of representation, you can pull this study up. It's called the Doll Study. It really was a big part of the Brown versus Board of Education and moving that along with segregation and things like that. This experiment took several children ages 3 to 7. They had 4 dolls. And so there were 2 white dolls, and then there were 2 black dolls. And in this particular series, at that time, TV was not widely watched. There were some TVs, and a lot of families probably didn't have TVs from what I read. And so it was like, how does society already know? How do these children already determine what beauty standards were? And so the majority, both white and black, of these children chose white dolls when it was identified as beauty. When we think about in this gaming age and character selection, why do still you see a lot of times even non-white characters or people playing still choose white characters? And is it just that there's the only selection available? Is it just that's what they identify with? That's what they want to identify with in this virtual reality world? What is it about? And so we start to think about why representation is important. Is it because they think that this is what leads to success? Different questions like that. When I think about television in the US, specifically around 1927, first TV was really advertised and put out there. The first Asian-led series was in 1951. I hadn't heard of the Gallery of Madame Louise song. I think I'm saying that wrong. But then also in 1956, we saw the first Black-led series, Nat King Cole's show. There was a mention that there was a variety show in 1939 that had Black actors on there. But in 1966, there was the first single woman series, That Girl. In 2020 was the first Latino-led series, George Lopez show. But we see earlier, I think that was the 60s with the I Love Lucy show. We saw Desi as one of the first Latino characters, main characters. And then this year was the first Native American series called Rutherford Falls. I'm not even sure if it's out yet. And so we see these things and we begin to question, why is this the first time we're seeing this several years after TV was out in mainstream? Why is this a thing? Do we not think society needs to see itself in media? Or do we not care? Things like that. So the different considerations as we begin to consider why representation matters. I also want to point out the first non-white Disney princess was seen in 1992 in Aladdin. And then you saw subsequent in Pocahontas in 95, Mulan in 98, Princess and the Frog in 2009. And so thinking about this child idea, growing up finding that, oh, only these white young ladies can be princesses. They're the only ones that can do that. Also, I mentioned this later, but I'll pull it up now. In gaming, and not just in gaming, in media, you see that there is this over-sexualized, or it's a damsel in distress, or there's objectification. So there's, and even in these Disney princesses, there's always this idea that you're waiting on a man to save you. You're waiting on someone to save you. So even how we represent women typically in the media has been really kind of interesting. And I know we had a talk about that just a moment ago as well. And then thinking about even Disney is beginning to shift the princesses from, Princess Peach, yes. Shifting princesses from individuals who are just waiting for love more to like, they happen to find love, or love happens to be there, or whatever. You see this shift where characters are not dependent on this male character. When you think about people of color, you rarely see that. Traditionally, it was rare that you would see people of color. When you would see maybe a Black character, you might see big, loud, angry, yelling, things like that. And then generally there was never, or the bad guy. I'm sorry, I definitely left that out. But it was never the leading character. And so you saw that generally. When we think about science, technology, engineering, mathematics, STEM, we see that 94% of university websites are male-oriented, fonts, colors, things like that. Even education is tracked, or there's gender-related marketing to children to go into certain tracks. And so this all, and I know you're like, does that even relate? It all relates. So it goes from watching TV as a child, you see there are certain characters or certain stereotypes, as someone just mentioned, that you're leading children already to believe that's where they belong. So by the time they get into their schools and things like that, they're already thinking, oh, I don't belong in those fields because I've already seen this is what women do. This is what people of character are seen to do. And so it can be a little discouraging to move people into STEM. We do see recent changes though. We see like females as main characters. There's a lot of them. One I pulled out was Assassin's Creed, which has traditionally been strong male lead. It is now has a female as a male character option there. There's an openly gay teen in The Last of Us Part 2. And I know that's been a question, why does sex have to do with it? It's just people are attracted to what looks like them. And just like in development, we develop things that look like our reality, or the things that look like our imagination. And so when we think about that, we think about how we shift our thinking to increase representation. And so 200 game industry companies have pledged to increase diversity within the company this year. There's also things like Reality Check, which we just heard about, and Gender Mag, which really start to show children and have even like checks and balances on games and programs to say, do you have enough gender representation? Do you have enough underrepresented minority representation? Things like this, so that it is not all the one-sided representation that we've seen thus far. Oh, I can never figure out how to, okay, here we go. So I love stats. I'm a data person. So just quickly, gamer stats. So in 2019, 2.5 billion active gamers worldwide. That's how many there were, which was 5 times more than 2014. They expect, I say whoever they is, 3 billion by 2023. In 2020, were nearly 40% of the world's population playing video games. And so that is an amazing number. We see that 80%, in this particular study, they found that 80% of gamers play on their smartphone, 41% on PCs, and then 8% on consoles. This kind of surprised me because I thought surely it would be more people playing on consoles, but yes, looks like smartphones are a little more accessible at this time. Let's see. About, let's see, with video game usage, device usage, we do see that Gen Alpha, I meant to look up what that is, and Gen Z are active console players. I should have looked at, well, I guess I can go over here to see the ages on the other side. But then Gen Alpha, 79% of Gen Alpha and Gen Z are active mobile players. And then 56% of millennials are active PC players. When you look at the distribution of age, we are seeing about 38% are between 18 and 34 years old, 26, about 36 to 54. It still surprises me that 6% are 65 years and older, which is my bias in thinking that only young people play video games. So continuing with those stats, we find that video game players worldwide by region, Asian Pacific has this highest number, 1.4 billion people playing video games. And we see even North America, only 210 million there. During COVID, there was a study talking about the increase in gamers, 46% increase in the US, 41 in France, 28 in UK, 23 in Germany. Kind of exciting. I guess as you would expect, we were kind of quarantined, housing and things like that. Have a little more time to do that. We found that women, 58% age 35 to 54, enjoy playing with friends, but then you see 68% of US males 18 to 34 like to play with friends. I was surprised to see 77% of US males above or 65 and older like to play alone, whereas 81% of women 65 and older like to play alone. And I don't have the like numbers of how many people were in that study, so that's interesting though. When we talked about this a little bit, we think about the video game protagonists from 2015 and 2020, and there was a little statement that video gaming is no longer just a hobby for teenage boys. It is enjoyed by people of all genders, ethnicities, and ages. And this is beginning to be reflected in the representation of society within video games. In 2016, just 2% of video games had female protagonists, but this figure has jumped to 18% in 2020. I think when I first looked up, what does a gamer look like? It initially was, they talked about how it's thought of as this young white male in a basement, pale skin. It was kind of this idea that this is what a gamer looks like. And so we see that has been changing a lot. And you can see here, just even the idea of multiplayers has increased significantly in gaming. And game developers and thinking about how we change or how we can start to consider the differences in representation. So the race of developers, we still have 72% that are white, about 11% Asian. We do have some Hispanic, Latino representation there, 7%, Black and African American, 6.3%, and unknown about almost 3%, 2.4%, and American Indian, Alaskan Native, just under 0.5%. The age of developers actually is 40 plus years old, so about 60% of the developers are over 40. The race and genders of developers, this was interesting to me. So American Indian and Alaskan Native, we see that is about 52.5% are male and American Indian and Alaskan Native. I expected a little bit different there, so that was interesting. Even females in that category are high on that development part. Oh, and I see someone asked developers for which games. This was a aggregated numbers here on this particular study. I don't know, they didn't say exactly which games they looked at, but it was the gaming statistical. I have the site here and I'll post that in a second. So developer male to female ratio, we see that video game developer, there are much more males, almost 74% of the industry is male, whereas only just under 25% we see female in the development. Yes, this is worldwide with these. sorry, I'm catching some comments and not the others, but I'll go back. Quickly, I just want to talk a little bit more about STEM. And if you were on the call in December, you've heard this, you've seen this, but I just want to touch on a few things of how like just a topic like computer science. So in STEM research and STEM, getting more people into STEM. So we see female students are less likely than males to even be aware that there are opportunities, and this is specifically computer science. And we find that males are more likely to be told by parents or teachers that they will be good at computer science. So it's not generally a thing that female students are told, like they're not told you should pursue computer science. And you see that percentage there, 46% males said they were, 27% female, and then 39% to 26% female. The teacher said you will be good at computer science. Hopefully I didn't confuse you too much on that one. And more parents lacked interest in computer science as a major. This impacted females and racial and ethnic minorities. When you don't have that support behind you, sometimes that can really push you back on thinking this may be a good idea. Black students were less likely than white students to have classes dedicated to computer science, so 47% versus the 58%. Less likely to have a computer at home. We have like there's 80, I think we talked about this, but it's like 80 something percent have at least a smartphone, but we still see, you know, percent of Black students are showing to have computers in the home, 68 versus 68% for white and 50% for Hispanic or Latino. When we think about the research culture and representation, underrepresented minorities are about 3.5% of the faculty in life sciences, only 6.3% in basic sciences departments. Women, we're still seeing low, 39% in life sciences and 35% in basic science. And then, as I stated in the abstract, only 27% of women published in STEM fields in the last 60 years. And then you see an estimated about 34% of women in tech, 43% in STEM, 30% in science worldwide. Really shocking numbers there. And when we think about women and minorities in tech, there is an alienation of female recruits. It generally is like presentation leaning towards masculine language and drawing masculine people, be that the figures that they have, be that the type of characters they build that they're showing, things like that. So UC Berkeley has a course called The Beauty and Joy of Computing. And this wording has increased. They've seen an increase in females taking that course. And we see differences in salary. So women in STEM make about $16,000 less than males, and then $14,000 less if Black or Hispanic. So really see those major disparities there just in how the field works. So how do we improve present representation? And I want to say this, don't get me wrong at all. We need white men. We need all of the white men that are here. We just need everyone else too. This is a complex issue, but it has great benefits. You see innovation, you see improvements in teams, improvements in outcome. And when you think about the reason why, it's about that diversity, that difference. You have people having different ideas, coming from different experiences, having these different mindsets and things that they can bring to the table. And so you see an improvement in the product that you put out, which then improves basically who wants to use it, because it's like, oh, this kind of looks like me, things like that. So changing the society image of a gamer, developer, engineer, like I said, complex issue, but it's important to start thinking about how to include those different groups that are not represented currently, or low representation, even in what the image looks like. So engineers should not only look like a man in a lab coat. A developer should not only look like, and for that matter, shouldn't only look like a female in Asia. It should be a good diversity, and diversity, like I said, just means difference. Game development should include who you're trying to attract. So you should have a little of everybody, a little of everybody's experiences, a little of everybody there representing. When we think about marketing and encouraging involvement in more diverse groups and programs, so we talked about this a little bit earlier too, maybe starting at the high school level, start talking to some of those high school seniors about what Eterna is and what STEM looks like and the different opportunities that are available. Going to some of the career days and talking about this. But I think let's go even younger, start introducing these different career paths into STEM and things like that. I think about things like career day when we were in elementary school, and how just knowing there was something other than like police or doctor or things like that, like expanding that horizon of what children are exposed to. So there's my references. I tried to go really quick this time. So thank you very much. I think it'd be a really interesting conversation on how we can continue to improve representation in gaming and society, in media, and how we continue to develop for STEM.